So Ms. Aisha, Osori, thank you for joining us in this conversation. It's a pleasure to have you on. Um, Let me start by asking if you feel that the concerns of young Nigerians who have mobilized themselves in the streets in Abuja, in Lagos, in Oyo, in Delta, in Benin, if they have truly a legitimate concern that the police will not just be reformed, but that the notorious SARS units be completely disbanded.
I think, thank you, Ayo, for wanting to hear my thoughts on this. There's so many people who I'm sure, are more involved and probably have more personal stories. But I would start by saying that I think that the views of the young people who are mobilizing around the country today are completely legitimate. In fact, they're 101% legitimate because we've been down this road before, because we've heard before that SARS was going to be disbanded. In fact, we are grateful for social media that allows us to keep receipts, but people have been sharing from 2017, from 2018, from 2019, things that have been said about ending SARS, disbanding SARS, reforming SARS, whatever they want to do with SARS, but it has remained a perennial problem. So I think the strategy of young people to say, no, we're going to remain on the streets, that the announcement of a few days ago saying that SARS was going to be disbanded, that, with the bullet points, the 5 bullet things. And of course, one of the most glaring things that's missing from that list of 5 things is anything to do with justice and an end to impunity. People have lost their lives. People have been killed in cold blood. And there's nothing on that list of 5 things that the government presented, the Nigerian police force presented, that says anything about giving justice, that says anything about punishing those who have been found wanting, those who have been killing people, robbing people. The truth is, I honestly haven't had any personal experience with SARS. But of course, I have heard the stories to the point where I will not lie. I don't know whether this is something other Nigerians feel, but when I come across a policeman or policemen, my heart begins to race. I'm immediately in flight or fight mode. So much so that I didn't even realize that my children noticed that when we're stopped at a checkpoint, however well-meaning these checkpoints might be, and if I'm in the car with my children, then very rarely is it at night. It's probably then during the day. But they tell me that, Mama, your whole body tenses up, your voice changes. I didn't even realize it until they said so. So we are living in bondage. The truth is, it's oppressive. I've lived, unfortunately, abroad for a couple of years. I've lived in the US for a while. I've lived in Germany for over a year. I've spent a lot of time in England. I have never felt the type of visceral threat when I see a policeman that I feel when I see a Nigerian policeman.
I
And
mean,
some might say that
yeah.
that's brainwashing, but it's not brainwashing. It is the story of other people that I know are just like me. I don't consider myself special.
I mean, I picked 3 important words that you've just mentioned here, which is oppressive, which is impunity. I mean, how do we begin? Because now the federal government have claimed that they have completely disbanded SARS, and they are going to initiate a process to ensure that there are, some sort of reforms within the police force. But in your own opinion, how do we as a country begin to deal with the impunity in the Nigeria police? Is this something that should be solely the responsibility of the Inspector General of Police? Or how do we create some sort of a watchdog that ensures that this impunity in the police that we see is somewhat tamed, if not eradicated?
I think structural things need to be done to describe exactly what to achieve what you've just described. The first thing that I can think of is there's the Police Service Commission. So ideally, they are supposed to be in charge of disciplining the Nigerian police and overseeing them and monitoring them. So I'll say first off that, of course, it can't be left to the IGP. It's not his role per se. It's the role of the Nigerian Service Commission. That said, it seems the Nigerian Service Commission, Police Service Commission, it's a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? an anomaly because it's usually headed by a retired policeman. And so you find that you cannot the police can't police themselves, so to speak. So you put this commission together, you put a couple of civil society people on it, but at the end of the day, they don't have power because it's chaired by a policeman, a former policeman who is part of the structure, understands the status quo, and really ideally is put there to make sure that nothing really changes. We do know there's nothing special about Nigeria. We do know from the history of oppression from centuries that the oppressors never just sort of say, we're tired of oppressing you. You're going to have to make them stop. So for me, I would say, no, it can't be left to the IGP. Two, it can't even be left entirely to the Police Service Commission as currently constituted. What we would like to see if they're serious about disbanding SARS is, of course, immediately right now, stop the brutality around the country. For me, that would be the first step. Because for me, end SARS is actually not even only about end SARS in the sense of take away these vicious people from our streets. It is about the oppression with which Nigerian citizens live with on a daily basis. So first of all, if they want us to take us seriously about their promise to disband, please end the killings, end the beatings, end the kidnaps, because that's what they are. They're not imprisonment, it's kidnapping. When you take innocent people from the streets who are not doing anything, who are only trying to exercise their constitutional rights to protest, that's kidnapping. That's not imprisonment, and that's not arrest.
Yeah, I like the fact that you, okay, please go on.
And I just want to say, then you can, when that stops, then we can all sit together. When I say all, meaning representatives of the young people who have put this together, they come first. They can decide who they want to be on this panel, committee. Then we can have maybe people from civil society. Then we can have people from maybe the police. And then we discuss, we have to create a framework to say, this is what we want to see. First, prosecute. First, investigate, prosecute, punish, then let's start talking about the reforms. People know that the police are not well cared for, except if you're an officer, if you're high up. We want to see that change. We want to see an end to police barracks where, really the conditions of living are very poor. We want to see better training, better equipment. We want to see an end to the extortion and abuse of the police themselves.
I like the fact that you talked about structure, because if you look at the composition of the Nigeria Police Council, he has the president as the chairman, he has the 36 state governors, the chairman of the Police Service Commission, and Inspector General of Police. And the act that sets it up clearly states that the Police Council is supposed to be in charge of administering and supervising the police force. Do you get the sense that the 36 governors across the country seem to be abdicating their responsibility and passing the buck to the federal government, claiming they have absolutely no control over the police, and they just have their hands up in the air, that they can't do anything about this? And they are quick to always forget that when it's about revenue, they gang up together, sue the federal government to court, get what they want when it concerns them. So do you think we have this problem consistently reoccurring because the governors have failed to live up to their responsibilities or use the structure of the police council to demand a better police force?
They're speaking with two sides of their mouths. And I think you've already pointed out their hypocrisy when you say that they've used different levers to force the federal government to do what they want when it suits them, i.e. when it comes to revenue allocation and what to do with our sovereign wealth fund. They are as complicit as the federal government in the abuse of the police. Let's not pretend we've not heard the stories. When it comes to elections, they know very well how to get the police on their side. When it comes to presidential elections, gubernatorial elections, local government elections, they know how to prime the police to do what they want, which is typically to intimidate the opposition. So how is it possible that now, when it comes to protecting the lives of their citizens in their states, they're suddenly powerless to do anything about it? So I think, as I said, they're speaking from two sides of their mouth. It comes down again to what kinds of oppressive structures we have in Nigeria. And Nigerian governors know that to keep the police the way they are pretty much suits them. If you even watch the language of some of our yesterday's opposition now in power, once upon a time, a governor, El-Rufai, was totally against state police when he wasn't in power. Now that he's in power, he thinks state police is a great idea. So you can see, as I said, that they speak with two sides of their mouth. When they're in power, they want everything to remain the same so they can use the same structures of oppression to continue to keep citizens down and to keep their place in power and access to public funds. When they're not in power, then suddenly they see clearly the evils of the police and know that it's very dangerous. So it's a very complicated thing. I think as we talk about NSAS today going forward, the issue of state police will come up over and over again. And then it's an opportunity for everybody to sit down and talk about their fears. I understand quite well what the arguments are for state police. But for me, state police is almost like saying create more states. We've gone from 12 states to 36 states, supposedly so that we can fast track development. Has that happened? What we've seen is that the culture of governance has just continued to perpetuate itself and spread. And the culture of governance in Nigeria is to exploit, extract, abuse. So if we create 36 police forces without changing the mentality, the culture of what it means to police, all we're going to be doing is democratizing that terror. That's all we're going to be doing. So we really need to sit and say, what type of police do we want in Nigeria? What kind of powers do they have? What kind of things can they do? And what are their responsibilities? And how can we hold them accountable? And when I say we, it's not just us citizens going on the street constantly. It's the judges, it's the judiciary, it's the legislature on the state level, the federal level. All those levels of control and accountability have to be working. We have to agree to ourselves that we do not want policemen who can basically stop you in your car, whoever you are, tell you to pull out your phone, check you. I mean, what kind, I can't even fathom it. Even as a foreigner in a foreign land, nobody has ever treated me that way.
I mean, at the heart of this is the basic dignity and rights of the average Nigeria, which is supposed to be sacrosanct in the constitution, of our country. And I guess that we cannot divorce, police brutality or the reforms of the police from larger systemic criminal justice reforms. So I guess my last question to you will be, what kind of systemic reengineering would you like to see in our country or propose such that the dignity and fundamental right of the average Nigerian is held by the policeman on the road, by the judges or the magistrates, the judges in the court, and to ensure that everybody is treated fairly and we uphold the tenets of a democratic society that we claim to be practicing?
That's an excellent question. How many hours do you have? Because it will take hours to do justice to that. But I'll start with saying something that we at Open Society Initiative West Africa have been working on for a long time across West Africa. The first thing for me is decriminalizing petty offenses. Decriminalizing petty offenses. If we don't do that, many of our criminal laws are still linked to the colonial times, when the British felt that, they wanted to be able to catch us at everything, vagrancy, walking around, jaywalking. No. If we decriminalize those petty offenses, the police will no longer have the excuse to just harass people daily who are just trying to go around their daily lives. And what you find is that these criminal offenses, obviously, they're always targeted at the poor, at the marginalized, at those who can't afford legal counsel. That's one. Two, we can also, when we do that, when we decriminalize petty offenses, then we can spend a bit of money on our prosecution, on making sure that our state prosecution offices are well equipped, well skilled, well trained, have all the resources they need to be able to defend people who cannot afford their own defense. Civil society fills a gap, but it's a small gap that we're feeling. There's a huge gap that remains to be filled. Third, I would say, is what we're talking about: reform the police. So you change the laws to decriminalize petty offenses, but then when we talk about defunding the police, restructuring the police, it starts from the bottom up. How are we recruiting? Who are we recruiting? How do we train them? What are we training them in? This culture of when you're in the police, you buy your uniform, you buy your boots. I mean, that's crazy. So we should be looking honestly at the budget of the police and looking at how it's spent, where it goes, and trying to find within the limited resources that we have, how best to use those resources. So it's not to say give the police more salary. It's to say, because all that will do is attract the criminals. If you say pay the police more, we'll find ourselves in the same place we find ourselves with our legislators. The legislature in Nigeria, National Assembly, is one of the best places to work in terms of revenue. So it attracts the worst people. So we cannot just pay them more. It needs to be train them more. It needs to be psychological. We need to spend money on what's the word I'm looking for? We need to invest in their psychological well-being. We need to make sure that we're not recruiting criminals. We need to make sure that there's punishment for impunity. We need to make sure that there's structures to make sure that their families are well cared for when they're killed. We need to make sure we don't attract the worst types of members of society into the police, because literally you're giving them guns. You're arming them to be able to go against society. I think if we do these three things and we do them well, we'll find that almost automatically the people who are supposed to serve and protect us will understand their role and stop exploiting and dehumanizing us. But honestly, as a parent, and even before I was a parent, I can only just imagine the pain of the families who have lost people, not just over the last couple of days, but just forever. The Apple 6 that were gunned down and killed. The countless stories we hear of people who just go missing, who go out one night to buy suya or recharge card and never come back. If I was a parent, honestly, I will burn down this country to avenge myself and avenge my pain and avenge my children. I'm surprised that Nigerians are not literally carrying out guerrilla war against the police and our security services. Enough is enough. It's inhumane what they do to people. I honestly can't understand how people contain their grief, and I hope I'm never tested. But because I'm praying that I'm never tested, I don't want anybody to be tested, because I know that if we reduce the number of people who have to go through this, then the probability that will happen to me or somebody that I love is also reduced. This is about enlightened self-interest. And to be honest, I'm ashamed of the elite. I'm ashamed of people that I consider my class, whether it's through education, whether it's through earning potential, who don't seem to understand that if we all don't live in a safe society, we ourselves are not safe. We're only pretending that we're safe.
Excellent place to leave this conversation. Thank you very much, for sparing the time, and we do hope that the government listens and make these reforms happen as fast as possible. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for this opportunity to share my views, and thanks for the work that you do, and best of luck. Keep shining the torch. We need it. The media is our fourth estate. Please don't relent and don't join the bad people.
Thank you.